says that he believes the mastermind behind Tuesday's attacks, what began all of this, is, of course, Osama bin Laden. Earlier today, bin Laden denied any involvement, but yet the president remains steadfast as more and more clues lead back to the declared enemy of the United States. And CNN's Mike Boettcher has this report on Osama bin Laden.
It came without warning. A catastrophic attack on the World Trade Center.
How to move back?
Less than an hour later, another terrorist strike at the heart of U.S. military might.
I hope I live. I hope I live. It's coming down on me.
Swirling amid the clouds of smoke billowing from these symbols of power, the terrible question: who could be behind such a devastating act of terrorism? The evidence is still being examined. One name tops the list of suspects. It's a name that's been on the FBI's 10 most wanted list for years: Osama bin Laden.
His organization has both the suicide bombers willing to die in these kinds of attacks. It also has the pilots. It's had a history of training pilots. And also it has basically the level of kind of sophistication and coordination to bring off something like this.
The 44-year-old bin Laden, through a spokesman, denies any involvement. But according to a Palestinian journalist, he congratulated those who carried out the deadly attacks. The ruling Taliban government of Afghanistan, the country where bin Laden is believed to be in hiding, says the Islamic extremists could not be responsible. In Western intelligence circles, bin Laden has been well known for years for this document: a call for jihad, or holy war, against the thousands of U.S. soldiers now stationed in Saudi Arabia. That call to jihad came after 2 bombings of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia. The first in Riyadh in 1995, 7 dead. The second in Dhahran in 1996, 19 dead, hundreds injured. Bin Laden discussed that call to arms in his first ever television interview with CNN in 1997.
We declared a jihad, a holy war against the United States government because it's unjust, criminal, and tyrannical.
Bin Laden wants U.S. troops out of Saudi Arabia. He opposes U.S. bombing campaigns in Iraq. He is against U.S. support of Israel, and he objects to U.S. backing of Arab nations he deems un-Islamic, such as Egypt. Bin Laden has been indicted as the mastermind behind the bombings of 2 U.S. embassies in Africa that killed 224 people in 1998. He is a prime suspect in the bombing of the USS Cole last October. That blast killed 17 U.S. sailors. And the U.S. State Department has linked him to the first attack on the World Trade Center in February of 1993. 6 people were killed and thousands injured.
The man is ruthless, and he believes that he should declare war against the United States. And this kind of appeal, this kind of call actually appealed to many young Muslims all over the world.
A videotape circulating around the Middle East and on the internet surfaced just 3 months ago. It shows bin Laden training young militants, some who seem as young as 11, for his holy war. Bin Laden makes an impassioned plea for recruits in the 2-hour tape. The videotape also hints that bin Laden is planning additional anti-American operations.
One thing that bin Laden does before a big attack happens is that he subtly indicates several months before, or a couple of months before, that something's in the works.
The man codenamed the Contractor has used his enormous wealth to advance those militant plans. He was born the son of a multimillionaire Saudi construction magnate. He's the 17th of 52 children, some of whom live in the United States. His father died when he was 10. The family construction business, the largest in Saudi Arabia, is now worth an estimated $5 billion. Osama bin Laden's first marriage was to a Syrian cousin at the age of 17.
His education took place at quite a good university in Saudi Arabia, where he studied public administration, economics. He'd also already participated a little bit in the family business. From a young age, he was involved in the family business. This is not an unsophisticated guy. This is somebody who comes from one of the most well-connected families in Saudi Arabia, one of the richest.
He would later draw on the resources of his family business and his experience as a demolitions expert. After the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in 1979, his life would take a radical turn. Bin Laden has been in Afghanistan on and off since the 1980s, when he joined the Afghan resistance in its war against the Soviet Union. At 23 years of age and deeply religious, Osama bin Laden left his comfortable life in Saudi Arabia to fight alongside thousands of volunteers from the Islamic world. He used his family wealth, construction equipment, and demolition expertise to help in the crusade, and he would become a leader of the so-called Afghan Arabs.
Because of that, a lot of people wanted to participate in jihad, and they thought that Osama is an important figure. But he was not only willing to put his money, but he actually gone there himself and fought himself and get hurt.
The Afghan war changed bin Laden. He saw a lightly armed guerrilla force defeat a superpower.
In this jihad, the biggest benefit was the myth of the superpower was destroyed, not only in my mind, but also in the minds of all Muslims.
The Afghan war also radicalized those who fought there.
These Saudis who went and fought became convinced that you simply didn't have to accept regimes as they were, that as a Muslim you could take action against a ruling government.
For the U.S., there is a sad irony to bin Laden's current holy war. American tax dollars once helped support people aligned with bin Laden. During the 1980s, via the CIA, the United States poured $3 billion into the Afghan resistance that was fighting to drive the Soviets out of Afghanistan.
It is true that some remnants of those Afghan fighters, including bin Laden, have used their military knowledge and their skills to branch out into international terrorism.
Indeed, many of the Afghan freedom fighters are among the thousands of committed followers bin Laden has today throughout the Middle East.
They are either direct followers, taking direct command and order from bin Laden, or they are small cells and groups who believe bin Laden is a godfather. His message is almost like a religious order.
After the Afghan war, bin Laden became disillusioned with the Saudi regime, deeming it insufficiently Islamic. He moved to the Sudan. 5 years later, under U.S. and Saudi pressure, bin Laden was expelled from the Sudan. Bin Laden took refuge in Afghanistan, perhaps the only country in the world that would accept him. It was here in 1997 that then CNN producer Peter Bergen caught up with him.
And we went to Afghanistan, to the tiny town of Jalalabad, which is in eastern Afghanistan, waited around for quite some time. Finally, bin Laden's media advisor came and talked to us. He said, you can only bring the clothes you're wearing, don't bring any watches, don't bring anything that might secrete some sort of tracking device. We took a curtained van, along a road, along a river. It was by now getting to be dusk. We were given kind of sunglasses which basically they weren't blindfolds, but you couldn't see through these things. We finally got to this hut about 5,000–6,000 feet up in the Afghan mountains. It was March, so it was pretty cold. Suddenly bin Laden appears out of the darkness.
In our 1997 interview, bin Laden expressed why he so hates America.
The U.S. government has committed acts that are extremely unjust, hideous, and criminal through its support of the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And we believe the U.S. is directly responsible for those killed in Palestine, Lebanon, and Iraq. Due to its subordination to the Jews, the arrogance of the United States regime has reached the point that they occupied Arabia, the holiest place of the Muslims, who are more than 1 billion people in the world today. For this and other acts of aggression and injustice, we have declared jihad against the U.S.
Bin Laden said the jihad was aimed principally at U.S. government targets overseas.
We have focused declaration of jihad on striking at the U.S. soldiers inside Arabia, the country of the two holy places, Mecca and Medina. In our religion, it is not permissible for any non-Muslims to stay in Arabia. Therefore, even though the American civilians are not targeted in our plan, they must leave. We do not guarantee their safety.
When this guy delivers his statements attacking the U.S. presence or his call for jihad, he is justifying these actions in very explicit Quranic, Islamic terms with a long, it's like a careful legal brief that he's drawn up here.
And bin Laden and his followers have backed up his call for jihad time and again. Somalia, 1992. 28,000 U.S. troops are dispatched on a humanitarian mission to a Muslim nation embroiled in famine and civil war. U.S. soldiers are caught in the crossfire. 18 are killed. In his first admission to a U.S. news organization, bin Laden says Arabs who fought in Afghanistan, men who looked to him as a leader, killed those U.S. troops.
Resistance started against the American invasion because Muslims did not believe the U.S. allegations that they came to save the Somalis. With Allah's grace, Muslims in Somalia cooperated with some Arab holy warriors who were in Afghanistan. Together, they killed large numbers of American occupation troops.
He's brazenly said that his people were responsible for that, so we take him at his word.
It is not the only attack on U.S. troops linked to bin Laden. The U.S. government says that bin Laden forces attempted to bomb U.S. servicemen on their way to Somalia. The bomb killed 2, but no U.S. soldiers. Then there is the possibility of a bin Laden connection to 2 bombings in Saudi Arabia, at Riyadh in 1995 and Dhahran in 1996, that left a total of 24 U.S. troops dead.
It's no secret that during the 2 explosions I was not in Saudi Arabia, but I have great respect for the people who did this. They are heroes. What they did is a big honor that I miss participating in.
The Saudi government accused these Saudi citizens of planting the Riyadh bomb. 3 of the 4 men were Afghan Arabs who fought in the war against the Soviets. They acknowledged their role, probably under duress, and were later executed.
According to experience in explosives which I gained during the Afghan war, I assembled the bombs in this car.
They also acknowledge bin Laden's teaching.
We received pamphlets from Osama bin Laden and others.
The U.S. government also points to bin Laden's circumstantial ties to the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. Ramzi Youssef, mastermind of that attack, afterwards fled to Pakistan, where he lived in a guest house for Islamic radicals funded by bin Laden. Bin Laden denies this.
I don't know Ramzi Youssef. What the American government and Pakistani intelligence has been reporting isn't true at all.
The man considered the spiritual leader of Ramzi Youssef's and the 1993 World Trade Center bombers, Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, also has links to bin Laden. The State Department says that bin Laden finances a training camp in Afghanistan for 2 Egyptian terrorist groups that look to Sheikh Rahman as their spiritual leader.
Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman is a Muslim scholar well known all over the Muslim world. He represents the kind of injustice that is adopted by the U.S. A baseless case was fabricated against him, even though he is a blind old man.
In 1998, Rahman's sons joined forces with bin Laden. During a rare press conference in Afghanistan, bin Laden dropped hints of another strike at U.S. interests overseas.
He talked about good news in coming weeks.
9 weeks later, it would become clear exactly what that good news was.
He's alive! He's alive! He's alive!
On August 7th,